Humans were the only known species in the galaxy that kept animals as companions. To the Jegzari Dominion, this was both confusing and disturbing. The Jegzari were a highly logical race, tall humanoids with blue-tinted skin and eyes that reflected a light like polished metal. They had conquered over 30 systems through a combination of superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Their society valued utility above all else. Every action, every resource, every relationship had to serve a clear purpose. That was the Jegzari way. When they discovered Earth, they were initially impressed by human ingenuity and adaptability. But the more they studied humanity, the more perplexed they became by one particular behavior. Supreme Commander Zaltar stood in the observation room of the flagship Inevitable Conclusion, watching the holographic display of human cities. His slender blue fingers tapped against the control panel as the images shifted from one scene to another. Humans walking animals on leashes, humans sharing their living spaces with furry creatures, humans talking to birds in cages. It made no sense. "Explain this behavior again," he ordered Science Officer Telva. "Why do they waste resources on these non-sentient organisms?" Telva moved her long fingers over the control panel, bringing up research data. "Our studies indicate they call these creatures pets," she replied. "The humans provide them with food, shelter, and medical care, despite receiving minimal practical benefits in return." Zaltar's metallic eyes narrowed. "There must be some utility we're missing. No intelligent species would expend resources without purpose." "We've found no significant practical benefit," Telva insisted. "Some animals perform minor security functions or pest control, but most serve no practical purpose at all. The humans claim they keep these animals for companionship and emotional support." The commander made a dismissive gesture. Emotional support. How predictably primitive. This weakness will make their conquest even simpler than we anticipated. He turned to military strategist Corvin, who had been silently observing the discussion. "Update the invasion plans. We should account for these pets in our calculations. The humans will likely waste valuable time trying to protect their animal companions." Corvin, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests, looked troubled. "Commander, with respect, we should not underestimate any aspect of human behavior simply because we don't understand it." Zaltar's expression hardened. "You think these creatures matter to our strategic planning?" "I think there are aspects of humanity we don't fully comprehend," Corvin replied carefully. "Their attachment to these animals seems irrational to us, which means there could be other behaviors we're misinterpreting." The commander considered this for a moment. "Perhaps you're right. Deploy additional observation drones. If this pet-keeping behavior has any strategic significance, I want to know about it before we launch the invasion." For the next 30 Earth days, Jegzari observation drones recorded countless hours of human-animal interactions. The data was analyzed, categorized, and presented to the command staff, who remained baffled by what they saw. Humans spent billions in resources on animal food, toys, and medical care. They altered their homes to accommodate the needs of creatures that contributed nothing to productivity. When animals became ill or injured, humans displayed emotional distress comparable to what they showed for members of their own species. It defied all logical explanation. "This behavior cannot simply be dismissed as irrational," insisted Zaltar during the final pre-invasion briefing. "There must be an evolutionary advantage we're missing," Science Officer Telva had a theory. "Perhaps it's a form of status display. The ability to maintain a non-productive entity might signal resource abundance to potential mates." Military strategist Corvin shook his head. "That doesn't explain the emotional attachment. I've reviewed cases where humans risked their lives to save these creatures during disasters." Zaltar's patience was wearing thin. "Whatever the reason, it represents a vulnerability we can exploit. The invasion begins tomorrow. We will see how much these humans value their animal companions when their own survival is at stake." The command staff nodded in agreement. None of them could have predicted how wrong they were. The first wave of the Jegzari invasion targeted major human cities simultaneously. Their ships appeared without warning, hovering above population centers, while deployment pods rained down on strategic locations. The Jexari expected panic, disorganization, and rapid capitulation. What they encountered instead was surprisingly coordinated resistance. In New Chicago, Sarah Chen was walking her German Shepherd, Max, when the invasion began. The 30-year-old software engineer had no military training, but she did have something the Jexari didn't understand, a companion she trusted implicitly. When the alien pods began to fall, Max's behavior changed instantly. The dog became alert, ears forward, body tense. He pulled hard on his leash, urging Sarah away from the city center moments before the first energy weapons fired. All across Earth, similar scenes played out. Pets of all kinds were responding to the invasion before their human companions fully grasped what was happening. Cats becoming agitated, dogs barking at the sky, birds fluttering nervously in their cages, all providing their humans with critical seconds of warning. The Jexari had failed to account for something fundamental. Earth's animals had sensory capabilities different from humans. They could detect subtle changes in air pressure, hear frequencies beyond human range, and sense electromagnetic disturbances caused by Jexari technology. The very companions the aliens had dismissed as useless were now serving as an early warning system no human technology could match. Aboard the inevitable conclusion, Commander Zaltar received the first reports with disbelief. "How are they responding so quickly to our deployment patterns?" he demanded. "Our stealth technology should give us at least 3 minutes of tactical advantage." The tactical officer had no explanation. The command center fell silent as drone footage showed humans being led to safety by their animal companions. In one particularly disturbing clip, a small, fluffy creature called a cat hissed and clawed at a wall seconds before a Jexari soldier burst through it, giving the human family time to escape. "This cannot be coincidence," Zaltar said, his metallic eyes fixed on the displays. "There is something about these animals we've failed to understand." In the rural town of Millfield, James Wilson lived alone with his 3 dogs. The 60-year-old retired veterinarian had spent his life caring for animals. When the Jexari invasion reached his small community, he was tending to his garden while his dogs, a Labrador, a Collie, and an aging Beagle, lounged in the sun. The Beagle was the first to react, lifting his head and howling in a way James had never heard before. Within seconds, all 3 dogs were on alert, facing the same direction, their bodies rigid with tension. James trusted his companions enough to take immediate action. He grabbed his emergency kit and followed the dogs as they led him into the dense forest behind his property. Minutes later, Jexari forces moved through the abandoned town, finding it mysteriously empty. Throughout the first day of the invasion, the Jexari encountered unexpected resistance. Humans were evacuating areas before attack forces arrived. Defense points were established with surprising speed. Ambushes that should have been successful were being avoided. And strangest of all, animals seemed to be actively participating in the resistance. Dogs led groups of humans through safe passages. Cats slipped through Jexari perimeters, carrying small devices that later turned out to be communication tools. Even birds were being used to distract Jexari sensors at critical moments. "This is not random behavior," Corvin insisted during the emergency command meeting. "The humans are coordinating with these creatures in ways our intelligence failed to anticipate." Science Officer Telva reviewed the incoming data with growing concern. "We may have fundamentally misunderstood the relationship between humans and these animals," she admitted. "It's not just emotional attachment. There's a level of communication and cooperation we didn't detect during our observations." Zaltar paced the command deck, his frustration evident in his rigid posture. "How is this possible? The creatures are not sentient by any measure of our analysis." "Perhaps our definition of sentience is too narrow," suggested Corvin. "Or perhaps the bond between humans and these animals transcends what we can measure with our technology." By the 3rd day of the invasion, the Jexari were facing unexpected setbacks on multiple fronts. Their forces in rural areas reported difficulty finding humans who seemed to vanish into wilderness areas with uncanny precision. Urban operations were hampered by what appeared to be organized resistance from both humans and animals. Most concerning of all were reports that Jexari soldiers were beginning to experience something unfamiliar: hesitation when confronted with humans protecting their animal companions. The sight of a human shielding a vulnerable creature with their own body triggered something unexpected in the Jexari psyche. A discomfort, almost a shame. In what would later be known as the Battle of Central Park, the turning point of the invasion came in a moment no Jexari could have predicted. A squad of their elite soldiers had cornered a group of humans who had been coordinating resistance in New York. Among the humans was a young girl clutching a small dog. When the Jexari commander ordered his troops to fire, the dog broke free from the girl's arms and lunged at the aliens. It was a futile gesture, a tiny creature against armored soldiers. But what happened next changed the course of the invasion. The girl cried out and ran after her pet, placing herself in the line of fire. Without hesitation, every adult human in the group moved to protect both the child and the animal, forming a living shield despite being clearly outmatched. The Jexari squad hesitated. Their weapons remained pointed at the humans, but no one fired. The squad leader later reported that in that moment he experienced an unfamiliar sensation, a recognition of something powerful and incomprehensible in the humans' actions. The entire squad retreated, allowing the humans to escape. When footage of this incident reached the inevitable conclusion, Commander Zoltar watched it in stunned silence. "What is this behavior?" he finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "Why would they risk death for both an immature human and a non-sentient animal?" Science Officer Telver had been analyzing thousands of human-animal interactions captured during the invasion. "Commander," she said slowly, "I believe we've discovered what we missed in our initial assessment. The human attachment to these animals isn't a weakness. It's the source of a kind of strength we don't possess." She brought up a series of images on the main display. Humans and animals working together in countless ways during the crisis. They call it loyalty. It appears to be a mutual bond of protection and care that transcends self-interest. Both the humans and their animal companions display it. Military strategist Corvan had reached a similar conclusion. "These creatures aren't just companions or tools," he explained. "They're family to the humans, and this bond extends beyond their relationship with animals. The humans protect each other with the same fierce devotion. It's not logical by our standards, but it creates a cohesion our forces can't match." Zoltar stood before the display, watching a human carrying an injured dog through a dangerous area, risking exposure to Jexari patrols rather than abandoning the animal. How can such irrational behavior be a source of strength? He wondered aloud. The answer came from an unexpected source. A captured human, a retired military officer named Dr. Robert Chen, explained it during interrogation. "You think keeping pets is illogical because you measure everything by utility," he told his Jexari captors. "But loyalty, the bond between a human and their dog, their cat, their companion of any kind, teaches us something your species never learned. It teaches us that relationships have value beyond what we get from them. That caring for another being, even when it's difficult, even when it costs us, makes us stronger, not weaker." The Jexari interrogator reported these words with a troubling admission. "I found his argument affecting. By the 7th day of the invasion, the Jexari High Command was facing an unprecedented situation. Their forces were not just encountering military resistance, but were experiencing moral confusion. Reports came in of Jexari soldiers refusing to fire on humans protecting animals, of squad leaders questioning orders to separate humans from their pets during processing. The very concept of loyalty, so foreign to their utility-focused minds, was somehow infectious. As they witnessed the bond between humans and their animal companions, a bond that offered no obvious evolutionary or practical advantage, the Jexari began to question their own values. Commander Zoltar called an emergency meeting of the High Command. "We face a choice," he told the assembled officers. We can escalate to full orbital bombardment, destroying major human population centers from space. This would eliminate the immediate resistance, but would require explanation to the Galactic Council. Or we can withdraw and reassess. The command room erupted in debate. Orbital bombardment had never been necessary before. It violated certain interstellar conventions. But withdrawal was equally unprecedented. The Jexari Dominion did not retreat. Science. Officer Telva spoke last, her analysis cutting through the heated arguments. The humans' bond with their animals is merely one expression of a capacity we critically underestimated, she said. They form attachments that defy logical explanation, but provide them with remarkable resilience and cooperation. If we continue this invasion, we will need to destroy them completely, because they will never surrender as long as they have others to protect, whether those others are human or animal. The command room fell silent as her words sank in. Even total victory would come at a cost the Jexari had never paid before. In the end, Commander Zoltar made an unprecedented decision. The Jexari forces would withdraw from Earth. Not because they couldn't win through overwhelming force, but because the cost of victory had become unacceptably high. The official reason given to the Galactic Council was that Earth requires further study before full integration into the Dominion. The unofficial reason, discussed only among the highest levels of Jexari leadership, was that they had encountered something they couldn't quantify or overcome, the power of a bond they had dismissed as irrational. As the Jexari fleet departed, Earth's orbit, Science Officer Telva stood with Commander Zoltar on the observation deck. Below them, the blue-green planet continued its rotation, inhabited by beings whose strength came from something the Jexari had never valued. We should have recognized it sooner, Telva said quietly. The humans' relationship with their animals wasn't a diversion of resources without purpose. It was an expression of their most powerful adaptation, their capacity for connection despite difference, for loyalty despite cost. Zoltar nodded slowly. A lesson for our own evolution, perhaps, he admitted. There may be forms of strength beyond efficiency. In the years that followed, the Jexari Dominion underwent a gradual but profound transformation. The encounter with humanity had introduced a concept previously unknown in their utilitarian society. That value could exist beyond function, that loyalty could be a source of strength rather than weakness. Some Jexari even began the unprecedented practice of forming bonds with non-sentient creatures from their own worlds, discovering aspects of existence their species had never experienced before. And on official Jexari documentation, Earth received a unique classification. Approach with caution. Inhabitants possess advanced capacity for loyalty, strategic implications not fully understood. On Earth, few humans understood how close their Giai had come to destruction, or how they had been saved by something they took for granted. As Sarah Chen took her dog Max for a walk 6 months after what was now called the Week of Lights, she had no idea that this simple act of companionship represented something revolutionary to the wider galaxy. She simply knelt down to ruffle the fur around Max's neck, smiling as he licked her face enthusiastically. "Good boy," she said. "Best friend a girl could have." Max wagged his tail, understanding the tone if not the words. The bond between them, incomprehensible to some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy, was perfectly clear to both of them.